welcome back to RIU Podcast. So this is podcast brought to you by Research and Innovation Unit, CFS IIUM. So once again, we are here with our panelists. So I will introduce them in a short while. First of all, thank you for watching this podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you also to Library. This is our beautiful scene for today. We will show our podcast here today, and inshallah we will discuss I think a very controversial and unique topic. The topic is science versus social science. So this is this controversial, like male versus female? So let's look. Let's go through our discussion. I will discuss more on this topic. So with us today we have two panelists. I think both of them is the most suitable panelists for our topic for today. Let me tell you why. Before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Fiza, and I will be the moderator for today. And our first panelist, on my left-hand side, this is Dr. Nur Nadiah Abdul Rashid. So let's welcome her. She just come back from her PhD.
Yes.
For 4 years. So I haven't seen you much.
No, it's 3.5 years, not 4.
3.5 years. So 6 months less, right? GOT, graduate on time?
Yes.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes, I did. Yep.
So your research topic is on pharmacy?
Yes.
PhD in pharmacy?
Pharmacy, the field is pharmaceutical technology. So basically, during my research time, I developed screening technique to detect ovarian cancer.
Okay.
So that is basically only the surface of my research, but other than that, maybe I can share it later during the session.
Okay. So I guess you are on the science research?
Yep.
Hard science.
Yeah. But I do actually apply social science research too.
Okay.
So it's actually mixing of both, but more on the scientific research.
More on scientific. Yep. Okay. All right. So thank you, Dr. Nadiah, for being here today.
Yep.
And our second panelist, we have here Brother Muhammad Rafaei, Muhammad Basri. Assalamualaikum, Rafaei.
Salam.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
Okay. So if you want to know, he is the one of prominent researcher in CFS IIUM. Okay. You're from AED, right? Architecture. But your research, I know, I did a bit of stalking. Okay. So your research is on design and also a lot of social science, right?
Yes.
So you have a bit of history and civilization, and also cultural. You have done research on hot coffee, right?
Yes.
And I think on education. That's the most prominent research that I see from your field of research. Do you have anything to add?
Actually, the first thing I would like to highlight is that architecture or the field of the environment falls under the social science actually. It's not under the science per se lah. Okay, because mostly at CFS IIUM, AED is one of the sciences, considered sciences. But actually in this nature, AED is actually falls under built environment which covers under the social science part of the research actually.
That's why
because it involves peoples, okay, and architecture itself is a product of the people. That's why I would say that my research is mainly on the social science.
That's why we have to define first, I think, Brother Rafaei, how can we define actually science and social science?
Okay, because nowadays in research, basically we can see that it is divided into two. We have the science research and another one is social science. Okay, science research is basically all the activities or systematic type of activities that being organized into the natural and the physical world, okay, physical aspect of the world, okay, through experimentation, we have through observations and other evidence-based type of research. So in philosophy, we call it it falls under the positivism type of theory, whereby everything has to be proved through evidence. That is the true nature or the main nature of science research. Okay, why social science is deals with peoples? Peoples is different because people, we have different backgrounds, different interpretation or different culture aspect compared to the sciences. That's why in social science, when we're dealing with peoples, it involves the behavior changes of the peoples, how people respond to certain issues, for example, and etc. So that's the difference between the two lah. We can say that hard science or the science research is particularly on evidence-based type of research or activities. We gather or we establish a new knowledge based on experiments or based on evidence activities, based on evidence. While social science is different because something that we encounter or we found out here at CFS might be different if we implement the same activities or research activities at another institution, okay, because of the backgrounds of the students or the staff might be different. Okay, that's the main difference between the two.
I think it's very clear. It's between the experiment where you have evidence and also the research on human. Do you have anything to add, Dr. Nadia?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Brother Rafaei said just now. It's just like the measurements and also the samples. Science, usually we have controlled samples, but for social science, we have uncontrolled samples. In this case, is human, which is they are very unpredictable. So behaviors, emotions, and so on. So that is just the thing that I want to add.
So
it's like controlled and uncontrolled environments that you have.
So especially in the methodology, right?
Yes. So about the methodology, I think they are totally different. They are distinct methodologies between scientific and also social science. So I want you to imagine like scientific research with the controlled experiments. We would like to have reproducibility where we want a consistent results. So imagine if it is like baking a cake. For science experiments or science research, like baking a cake. You know that the secret recipe restaurants where we have hundreds of outlets throughout Malaysia, right? So the cake from one outlet to another outlet, it must taste the same. The fluffiness of the cake must be the same, or else the consumers will complain and so on.
For example, secret recipe, right?
Yes,
it must
the secret
maintain
recipe.
the same recipe.
Yeah, throughout all the outlets, it must be the same. If you go to Indra Mahkota and then you go to Kota Sas outlet, the exact cake must taste the same, right? The quality must be the same. So baking a cake for science research, you must follow a specific recipe where you measure the ingredients precisely, and then even the steps taken for you to get the same quality, same taste cake, it must be following the same steps. So that is scientific or science research. But for social science, the analogy would be holding a party, like in our culture, kenduri, okay? So holding a kenduri where you also have the methodologies planned out. But the methodologies in terms of, let's say, holding a kenduri, that would be the venue. You have decided the venue, the menu, the props that you want to use, the tables, the chairs, and the canopies, and so on. But one thing is that you have unpredictable guests. That would be in social science, that would be your uncontrolled samples, right? So unpredictable guests where they have different backgrounds, they have different cultures, they have different behaviors and also emotions. So when you have these uncontrolled samples, what you need to do, the researchers need to adapt. Unlike science, the adaptation is not like the adaptation for social science. The adaptation is that if an experiment fails, so we change one of the variable, but we have calculated it precisely before we change a variable. In this case, you cannot change that for social science. So those are the difference or the main difference between science research and social science research in terms of methodologies.
I think that's a very brilliant analogy because like social science, if you say holding a party, so of course it will be different whether it's a birthday party or is kenduri naik haji, you know. So it's very different. And for experiment, I think I remember back the experiment that we done in school. So that is what the analogy looks like, where we must have all the variables checked in, right? We cannot have, we cannot just change
or
the
else
element.
you won't get the results that you wanted in the beginning.
Okay. Brother Rafaei, how about the aim and also objective? Is it different between science and social science?
Okay. Before that, I think I would like to add on the
Yes, please.
Okay, Dr. Nadiah just now on the because I'm very intrigued with the analogy that being
Yes,
given.
yes.
Okay, because you're using food, kan? Because I love food as well. Because
We all do.
yes,
We all do.
something that's very relatable to us, kan? Okay, during my experience before this, during our study days, okay, we went to India, for example. Okay, because it's all about peoples. Okay, we are talking about peoples. Okay, when we go to three different districts, three different states. We have Delhi, Jaipur, and Agra. Okay, and from each of these three, so from Delhi to Agra to Jaipur, okay, they have all different type of biryani, but we still ask for the same chicken biryani, but all of the three of them
Chicken
taste
biryani,
different.
yeah.
In the end, at Jaipur, we found that the biryani is just like our nasi goreng here
Oh,
in
okay.
Malaysia. But they are all using the same. Okay, that's to show that all the people have their own different backgrounds, okay, different
So
attitude, different
it
culture.
caters their locals,
Yes,
right?
that's the intricacy of the social science research. Okay, because people's difference
Yeah,
difference.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
we cannot predict unlike the science itself, where you can have a control type of experiments or everything, but not in for people. Because people act differently, culturally or behaviorally, it's different.
Yes.
Okay, so that's why the aims of the research for science and social science is quite distinct, because for science we go for something that is measurable and can be replicated at other site as well, or at other location as well. Whenever we want to do or redo the experiment, the result should be the same, because we control everything. Okay, that's of a standard measurement. We go for that measurable that outcome. While social science, we are more on the outcome is more on context specific. Context specific means that we appreciate the response of the people of that particular area, how they respond to that particular research, for example, or the questions. So it can be different. So even the way we ask the question, the same question, but in a different, when we rephrase the question, can come up with a different answers. That's a sign, because we want to know the true or the response by the respondent itself, which is people's, and then people react differently according to their background, according to their level of knowledge, according to their culture, for example.
Yeah.
So the aim would be different. For science, I would say that they go for something that's more measurable and standard, can be applied to all. While social science, we appreciate the differences. So we want to study why the differences is there. So what's the reason? That's will develop their science further.
Because in science we have the hypothesis, because you already
Yes.
know we already control the variable, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Even in social science, we do have the hypothesis and everything. It's just that sometimes there are lots of
different.
variables that can make the theory, for example, differ compared to the one that being established.
Yes.
Okay, that's the difference. For example, in our last CFS, for instance, kan, one of our colleagues, okay, found something that is anomaly in the theory of problem-based learning in statistics.
PBL.
So usually the result should be positive. Okay, you implement PBL, and then the result is expected based on theory, based on research, or based on the literature. It should be positive outcome to the student. But unfortunately,
It did
my
not.
colleague
Yeah.
found out differently. So that can basically trigger another research on social science. The aspect or what's the variables that actually lead to that kind of conclusion. So that's how
So the research just now is on CFS IUM students.
CFS IIUM student.
So maybe there's other variable that affect the result, right?
Because in social science there are lots of variables that we need to take into account. So that's why whenever we focusing only on 2 or 3 variables, but there are lots of others that might play a significant roles in shaping the overall outcome of the research.
So that also sparks for further research, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Dr. Nadia, based on what we have discussed just now, do you realize that science and social science complement each other?
Oh, yes. Yes, they actually, even in my research, take as an example, my research, I developed a screening technique to detect ovarian cancer. But before I even begin that, we actually, all the researchers, they need to do the literature review, right? So the literatures that I found, especially for Malaysia test statistic, it is not on the scientific part of ovarian cancer actually. It was more on how to cope with ovarian cancer patients, what do the family members felt at that time. So we are dealing with people here. So even the stages, different stages where we detected the illness, whether it's early stage or a later stage at stage 3 and stage 4, they play an important role in affecting the behaviors and emotions of the people, the patient itself, and the people surrounding them. So basically, it began with social science first. So the ovarian cancer statistic in Malaysia, it is regarding the social science, where they also go to a case study in trying to figure out what do they need to do, what are the approaches for them to help the patients, to help the family members in assisting the patients and so on. So based on the social science research, I took that in, all those researches. So I took that in and I applied, and I understand the problem first. Then I applied to why do I need to develop screening technique for ovarian cancer? Because actually we can actually screen ovarian cancer in lab, in hospital. But what I did was I developed something that is simpler, easy to use, and reachable to our community. So it is as if like, imagine our COVID-19 kit. Remember that previously, before we have that test kit, we actually have to go to clinics and hospitals to check whether we were infected with COVID-19. But after that, the scientists actually developed this kit where they are portable. That is why we call it as a home test kit.
That's at
So
home.
so basically, applying from the social science studies where it began with in China, right? It began, COVID-19 began in China. So starting with death rate was so high. So from that is actually social science research, right? So from that, it is the location, right? The demographic study. That is social science. So then the scientists went down to the ground, took samples and studied about the virus and so on. And then they developed vaccines and not drugs, but vaccines to achieve herd immunity. But that sample itself is complementing social science research with science research. In the end, even though the goals and objectives might not be the same, but very similar, where the social science is saying that why the death rate is too high. So we might need to lower this. For scientific, okay, I might have a solution to that. So they developed vaccine and so on, and it worked. So it was from social science, they combined, and achieving where they tried to understand each other's complexity of the situations, but they do achieve their own goals, which was to lower down the rate. And up until now, alhamdulillah, things look a lot brighter and better, right, with the vaccine and so on. So that is one of the examples. But I think another example that I can give where social science and science research complement each other, I think a very famous thing right now is electric cars, right? I think you might have looked through all the reviews of electric cars and so on. So basically, why do the scientists actually create electric cars? Because we know that in reality, the sources for petroleum and other gases are limited.
Yes.
Those things are finishing basically. And to have more petroleum, that will take thousands of years, right? So from there, they say that, why not? We make electric cars because electricity are renewable energy. So from that, they develop electric cars. But then, now that you have many options of electric cars, people still saying that oh, that electric cars are not for me because the range, the distance is not suitable. I need to balik kampung to Kelantan. That is
The
like
charging port.
that is like 500 kilometer, and then the battery range can only last me around 300 kilometer. Then I have to stop, and then I have 3 kids on tow. How can I survive 1 hour of charging? I have to queue at the charging port and so on. So now that is social science research where
It
they
becomes a
study.
problem, right?
Yeah, it becomes a problem among us, the users, the potential clients. So from there, the scientists would be, okay lah, let's solve this. So how right now they are thinking of how do they make the battery last longer? How do they make the charges faster? So again, that applies to the science research, so that it can cater the problem where it was arise from this social science research or social science case study and so on.
So I think it's very clear example for us
That they complement each other. Yeah.
Because COVID-19, everyone can relate to it, and also
Yes.
electric cars is the most newest topic right now with the charging port problem, right?
Yes.
That's why we never consider, right?
Are you buying now? Are you buying one?
No, I am very skeptical on the charging part. But if you want to know, they just have opened one charging port at Petronas Gambang. So don't say that
So are you
Gambang is so
No.
secluded, right?
Not yet.
Okay. I think
it's good. It's good
yeah.
thing that Dr. Nadiah shared about how basically social science, basically we instigate or we initiate the research itself.
Yes.
Okay, and then the scientific research. And to add to that, I can even after the scientific research, when on the implementation part, that will be social science.
It goes back to social science. Yeah,
Whether
yeah.
it is efficient enough, whether how the user will respond to that, whether it is culturally appropriate, everything will be social science. So we can say that it start with social science, and then in the middle is the scientific research, and then lastly will be end with the social science as well.
But then it goes back.
Yes, and then it goes
Scientific,
back.
because,
That's the cycle.
Yeah, it is still not enough for the consumers, so they keep on continuing
Yes.
doing the R&D and so on.
So
that
really
it will
complement
be-
each
Yep.
other. In terms of challenges, Rafaei, do you have unique challenges towards social science research?
Okay, as I mentioned before, because social science deals with people, okay, and when we talk about people, it opens to subjectivity. Okay, and subjectivity is very rampant in social science research because every group of people or every respondent, a set of respondent might respond differently from one area to another area because of their background, their culture, and
Yes.
even their race, or like there's lots of variables on that. Okay, that might lead them to respond differently compared to the one that we have in the literature and everything. So number one is I would say that on the subjectivity, and then second one is on the sensitivity itself. Because social science deals with people. Okay,
Yeah.
sometimes some of the aspect of the research is quite personal. It's quite which involve the privacy of the respondents and everything. So that's the things that we need to consider when we do our social science research. Even we as a lecturers, for example at CFS IIUM, we would like to conduct research with our student. We have to still maintain the privacy of the student.
Yeah,
There are few guidelines that we have to follow by research RMC. There's we have the guidelines we have before we conduct the research, so that we can maintain the level of confidentiality. For example, when involve the result for the student, for example, we have to think about the confidentiality of the result itself. There's a lot of things involving people. Okay, because some people would feel it's okay for them to be interviewed, or for them even the face or the names to be included in the
Exposed,
research,
yeah.
or to be exposed, but not all of them are like
Yeah.
that. Especially when their opinions is differ or contradicts the masses. So we have to consider that as well. So I would say that number one is on the subjectivity, and secondly on the sensitivity of the research itself.
So that's for social science research.
yes.
How about science?
Yeah, I would like to add, because from my own experience, right, I think for scientific research or experiments, it involves cost, especially. Not to all, but most of them, especially when you deal with biological molecules. Example, when I developed my kit, I used DNA, protein, and so on. So imagine the protein that I bought. The protein is actually the ovarian cancer biomarker. So that biomarker itself, can you imagine 50 grams? You can see 50 grams, right? Imagine from 50 grams, imagine 50 milligram. That is very little, 50 milligram. But the protein that I bought was 50 microgram. 50 microgram that costed me 2,400 ringgit. And I am a self-sponsored student. So because I applied for grant. So we have limitations of grant too in our community. I applied 4 grants. Only one was shortlisted. That was Majlis Kanser Negara, but never got to the final. But so basically, I had to, my first year of PhD was burned to the ground because of the cost was total up around 40,000 ringgit. So I decided to change the whole project, 85% of the project, so that I use alternative materials that costed me slightly less than 20,000. So it is still expensive. And you imagine that 50 microgram, when the protein arrived, I couldn't even see the protein. You cannot see that in the tube. You cannot see that. But we just have to trust that the supplier gave me the right protein and it's in there, even though I cannot see it. So, but we have a...
This is very small, right?
Yeah,
Milligram?
And it's translucent. So basically, like you cannot see it. It's like you tertumpah one drop of air manis or air syrup and it dried up. So you can only see like just a small part of it, but basically you cannot see anything because it's colorless. So, but we have an instrument to test whether the protein actually in there or not. So first, it's the cost. Okay. Second, when the cost was very high, obviously you want it to be, let's do it in one shot and pray to God that this will work. But you know that is not always the case. Okay, you can only usaha, then you tawakal and pray that this will work, but I failed many times. I think that is very, very, very normal to fail the first few times and then you get what you wanted. And other than that, not just the cost, but you have to look into the safety too, especially when you deal with clinical tests and so on, the animal testing, the test on human and so on. But I would like to also add for social science research, because I think before this, there were always debates between, no, science research is more difficult. It's more complicated. Social science is easy peasy. You always,
podcast, right?
Yeah, you can always hear that from any part of the world. Okay, but I have to disagree with that. Even though I'm the scientist that we call here, but I have to disagree because of social science. They have these challenges saying that you are doing survey and then you have to get 1,000 respondents.
Yes.
And okay, I'm asking you now, every time you get an email where you have to answer the survey, do you 100% answer those?
No.
No, right? So, but basically, the researcher actually tried to email, let's say, 1,200 potential respondents. He wanted only 1,000. But he didn't even get 200 respondents. So that is more difficult. To me, it's more difficult. And even if you imagine, let's say, okay, you want 1,000 respondents, and it must be specific range. I want it to be 40 to 45 years old, and it must be pregnant women. That will be even harder. So I would say that I know that science research is difficult, and social science is more complicated to me. So any field would actually have difficult challenges.
Their own unique challenges,
Yes,
right?
yes. Unique and difficult.
If you ask Rafaei whether he wants to answer the survey, honestly, I'll just answer the survey if I'm in the mood. If I have the mood and I say, oh, this is my interest, the topic is my
Pahala for you for answering that, for helping the researcher.
Yeah.
So maybe after this, every time we get that email, we would actually put
we
effort
need to
in answering
muhasabah
that.
ourselves, or just imagine we are in the researcher's shoes, right?
Yes. One survey, one pahala of this.
And whenever we receive a Google Form link, okay, for the surveys and everything from the students, everything to fill in, even the first thing to do is to check how many pages of the survey is that? So
always do that too.
when there's a lot of pages, then okay, it's okay. Or nantilah. In the end,
Orang kata apa, the importance is the niat, the
Yes.
intention. Okay, you get half the pahala there.
yes.
Okay, so back to what Rafaei discussed just now about sensitivity. Can we go back to that point?
Yes.
Is there any ethical issues that concern with social research since you are dealing with people and also the sensitivity of the people?
Yes. Okay. Number one, I think I can just repeat back the ones that I've mentioned before on the subjectivity and the sensitivity, because sensitivity is quite it's quite important whenever we do conduct social research. We have to maintain the sensitivity of the people itself, because we never know how the responder would respond to our question, for example, or some would feel offended with the question, because different people or different background would have different response to the type of question that we address to them. Okay, for instance, during our study just now in India, for instance, okay, we are there, okay, to study a complex of a ancient building. Okay, we are going to measure the buildings, and we had to come out with reports on the building, like a brief report of the building, and we had to construct back the building in models, in drawings and everything. And then suddenly there's a group of people come to us, and then it's like disagree, or is very angry to us that for them, as if that we are trying to steal their heritage.
It's
Why?
like copying, isn't
Like
it?
they're copying, like we are stealing their heritage. Okay, why? Although we already mentioned to them, we already explained to them that this is just for
Studies
academic
and
purposes. Okay, then we are going to compile everything. This for the benefit of everyone actually, but suddenly we get that kind of response. Okay, that's about sensitivity or nationalism. Okay, some would come to that extent. Okay, we never know, because people would react differently. Because we know that some of the culture are quite, I would say that obsessed with their own
Yeah,
culture, or obsessed with their own races and everything. So that's some of the challenges or the ethical things that we need to consider. That's why whenever we want to conduct research, make sure you have to make it properly. Okay, procedural wise, for instance, you have to get the approval from all the related departments. At least at CFS IIUM, the management has to know what kind of research. RMC need to know. We have to oblige to the standard, the guidelines. Okay, produced by RMC on conducting research and everything, because that will basically help us in the long run later on. Okay, so that everything is that there's somebody else that ensure the research itself is okay. Okay,
So it's very big issues, right?
and it will not
Yes.
backfire us in the later on.
Yeah.
Okay, so from the early stage, we need to be careful and
Yes.
oblige all the steps, right? Follow all the steps. How about in science? Because just now you mentioned on animal testing. I
Yes.
think there's an ethical issue also on that.
Yeah, true. So basically, thank you for bringing up this ethical considerations issue, because I think public wouldn't actually see this as a serious issue unless they are part of the research team or the study. Then they would actually know that ethics are very important for both fields, right? So for science research, the ethics would be different from one research to another. But usually, of course, when we deal with animal testing and so on, we actually have obstacles too there, because first, when you're doing research, you have your own timeline, right? But the ethics here, you have to get the approval from the authority. In my case, it would be the university, the authority. So we deal with lab rats. Right now, we deal with rodents. So lab rats, we have rabbits and also guinea pigs. But previously, we also tested on monkeys, because we say that the DNA of monkeys is very similar to human. But of course, the social science part, where the humanity, on the name of humanity, and also the society would actually say, no, this is cruel towards the animals and so on. And even if you still remember, decades ago, for cosmeceutical field, they test on cats and dogs, even bigger animals. So we say, okay, then we change into rodents, because rodents, they are easily reproduced, because like satu tikus 8 anak, so you get 8 anak at the same time, right? But then the science part, we have technology advancement. So right now we are using zebrafish. So at my lab at Kuliah of Science, we already focusing on this zebrafish, especially on Parkinson disease and also diabetic. So in case of zebrafish, because we can actually use the blood to test everything, and even Parkinson, right? Parkinson, usually we look at human, like when they are shaky and so on. In zebrafish, instead of they actually, if you have an aquarium, you should the fish should actually just swim like that. But for Parkinson, because we install camera and so on, so we can see that they don't have the same pattern in healthy fish. So meaning that right now, the advancement of technology can actually use zebrafish instead of this more ethical, bigger animals. So, but still, we still need the approval of ethics. So basically, for science, the ethical consideration are very important. Same goes to social science. But for social science, I think the ethics would be more on respecting the human beings, because you don't want to cross over the boundaries between you and your sample. You don't want to manipulate the emotions, the behaviors. That is for social science. But go back to science research. In my lab itself, we have more than 20 types of cancer cells. So dealing with cancer cells, even we can actually touch the cancer cell, we have to wait for the ethical approval, because this, of course, we have to take extra precaution measures, safety, so that this won't transfer to us. So we have a specific SOP that we have to follow. And these cancer cells are the one that we are going to inject to the host, let's say the guinea pigs and all. So it is very important. Ethical consideration is very, very important. Same goes to social science, where they need to get the consent, like what Brother Rafaei just said. So both worlds, very important for the ethical considerations.
Okay, I think it's very amusing to hear that you're doing research on fish, because we cannot imagine, because
It's so small.
yeah, because we are only associated with rats, I think.
So before
mouse?
this, before this, they use bigger fish, and when they want to test the blood, they actually chop off the head. I hope that this do not get censored. Okay. So they chop off the head.
I'm imagining the chopping the
So
fish. Okay.
when they chop off the head, so you get the blood, and then the blood you run for sample. But right now, no, we have like micro needle made of glass, where even though your fish is very small, you can still take blood sample. And ikan kan gerak-gerak macam tu kan. Okay, so instead of it is actively moving, we transfer the fish into a colder water, a lower temperature water. So it won't be that active. So you just take out from water, and then you withdraw the blood. Then you put in the water back and increase the temperature back. Or you just put in another. So ethically, we do not kill the fish. Right? Before this, when I was doing my master, we have to kill the rats. So ethically, it is more ethical right now. The scientists are trying their hard to meet this ethical consideration.
I think it's amusing for me, because I left the world of lab long ago during
Come back.
school. So I think in this modern world, so we hear all this type of advanced technology, right?
Yep.
Brother Rafaei, how about which one do you think is more important in this modern world? Which type of research? Science or social science?
I think throughout our discussion, it's already established, okay, that both are are very important. Without social science, there will be no science, because there's nothing new for us to
explore.
uncover, for us
Yeah.
to explore. And without the science itself, there's no solution to the social science problem. Okay, because partly the solution comes from the science itself. So to be fair, I would say that both are very important in our daily life. Okay. Just one question, Dr. Nadia.
Yeah,
Because
let's start
are
on the
very,
fish.
very interested.
Don't imagine that.
Okay, I'm very interested when you say about testing on animals and everything.
Okay, yeah.
And then as much as possible, the scientists try to be very ethical in dealing with the other living organism.
Organisms, yeah.
Okay, so because we have the advancements of the technology right now that can predict, that can have models of the reaction of the all these organism and everything, kan? So why is that the living specimen is still needed in testing or in the experiment?
Oh, why not we just
Why not we
apply it
just
directly?
no, why not we just depends on the models by the computer, for example?
I think because like simulation, because my research is partly simulation. Once I get the DNA that I designed, so I sent for production of DNA. Only then I test for detecting ovarian cancer. So in this case, where you have to know that the technologies, right, the artificial intelligence, AI, simulation, and so on, they are man-made. So we know that we have hiccups here and there.
There's still limitation.
Yes, we
Okay.
cannot trust them 100%, even though we are relying on them, especially right now it's ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
Even before we come here, I Googled the title. So we are depending on AI.
Yes.
But we know that we cannot 100% rely on this simulation, technology, and so on. So that's why we have to come back to the reality where we say that we have similar DNAs before we test drugs and so on. So if it is safe to this, the test that we do, inshallah, it is applicable to the new host, example, to us, right? So that's why we cannot rely on the technology advancements 100%, even though it is important and it is beneficial to us in the modern world.
So the testing is still relevant.
Yes.
And still need to be done.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's conclude our podcast for today. Maybe one last word from both of you. What does the researchers, for example, researchers in CFS IUM, what can they do if they want to complement science, also social science, and also how they can change their mindset?
I think because I'm from Department of Chemistry, right? So, but even though chemistry background, but we are in the teaching line. So when we are in the teaching line, we can never go away from that social science research. It will. Chemistry is the science part. We have lab and so on. But you are dealing with students. Every semester, like this semester, I have 3 groups, right? That is around 66 students. So I have to cater these students too. So in my real world, which is as a lecturer, I have to complement this too. The social science research, where I have the students, I have to look at their behaviors, I have to look at their feedback in order for me to plan better in my lab and so on, in my teaching materials. That is more sciences, even though actually teaching chemistry is also at this level at CFS is actually more on social science too, because we do not have the hands-on, they're more on theory. So that's why I think whatever that we're doing here for our career or outside as researcher or as even as the public population, right? I think complementing social science and science research are very, very important. You don't leave anything out.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nadia.
Yeah, sure.
How about Rafaei? Your last word?
Okay, just similar, okay, to Dr. Nadia. Because I believe that the last ISFSE was very successful. Okay, we have a lots of over hundred over papers being submitted, being presented during the conference, for example. Okay, and among them, we can see that there's a lots of potential among our staff. It's actually whether it is from the science or from the arts. Okay, the social science or the scientific type of papers. Okay, and I can see that there's a lots of collaboration between social science and the science. Okay, during that particular conference, and
Yes.
that actually initiates something that is nurturing something that is very beautiful at our campus. And regardless whether you're from which background you are from, okay, from architecture or from QS, from mathematics, from chemistry, hierarchy, languages, all of us can contribute something to knowledge actually. Okay, and by collaborating, then we can achieve more.
Yes.
That will be the best part.
Yeah,
Okay.
interdisciplinary.
Yes, interdisciplinary.
Research. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a very beautiful conclusion.
Yes.
So let's collaborate maybe
Jom.
from
InsyaAllah.
mathematics, chemistry, and also architecture.
No problem. Inshallah.
I think the most important is don't be afraid to collaborate. Don't
Yes.
think, oh, I'm from science, so I just need to do research on science.
I
and you are
collaborated with
from-
you before, right? The
Yes.
gamification chemistry
Once
last
upon
year.
a time.
Yes.
2020, right?
Okay, so next year.
Inshallah.
This year, inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay, so I think that's all for today. Thank you for being with us, recording our podcast, RIU podcast. And thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to like and to subscribe. And last and not least, thank you library for providing us the space for our recording for today. So till we meet you again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.